Guys, happy Monday. I'm just back from my packed gig in Southampton, UK, in the comedy club there, and we had a great time. So I'm going to release, for everyone's benefit, the talk I gave. I actually gave two talks. The first one was on the pillars of health, and the second one that I have here was all around the geopolitical realities that we're facing in the world today. So everything from March 2020 onwards, all the craziness, all explained. Just a word for the censors in case they're there. All of this is fully published material in the archives of UN, WEF, and everyone else. And Dr. Jakob Nordengard has done a PhD essentially on this material, and that was defended and fully published in Sweden many years ago. So all fully published material, not a single slice, a whit, a soupçon, a frisson of conspiracy theory in any of this. So I think that's an important note. But it's still, for everyone else watching, absolutely stunning history, and it explains everything. It's root cause, guys. Geopolitical, not technical, but it's geopolitical root cause for everything that's happening in the world. So this is a biggie. Please do share, like, subscribe, etc. And there's a link down below to download the actual whole talk, this video, and to share it elsewhere. So delighted to give it for free, and thanks so much for everyone's support and anyone else who can support me. Let's go. I'm going to hold this thing. So geopolitical realities, and a lot of you'll be familiar. There might be one or two people who only know about the nutrition and health stuff, so this is going to be very different for you. So I presume they have smelling salts at the back there somewhere. Right. The price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. So there's an element to that in what's been going on, and a big problem. And the gentleman said earlier, it's so hard to convert people. Yeah, 30, 40 years, people have been indoctrinated to believe anything that comes from above is a conspiracy theory. So we have our work cut out for us. But if you don't take notice and be a critical thinker and push back, it's a free ride for them. So we can't stop. And this is from Sun Tzu, The Art of War, but the thing is that it's not an exact quote because it's evil enemy, but someone changed it. But I like this. An evil man will burn his own nation to the ground to rule over the ashes. And there's a lot of that with the top powerful people driving this. They're so desirous of power that they obviously will cause any amount of collateral damage. Because after 50, 60, 70 years going towards the goals, which I'll talk about, it is too big to fail. So, cornered rats are dangerous. And if people do push back, there could be fireworks in the next 10 years. So we'll wait, we'll see, but it has to be done. No evidence to support COVID lockdowns. This came out recently in Scottish press. So I think we've got a lot of mainstream that's acknowledged lockdowns are useless. And then we've got the UK inquiry with them keeping on saying we didn't lock down soon enough. So that's all the revisionism and the nonsense. And I expected that, and we're seeing it. The other thing is on COVID, a real quick thing, COVID. The cost, yeah, it has been acknowledged. I think this is financial paper, trillions in cost for all the nonsense. And also in CNN Business, they acknowledge billionaires got those trillions. So it's a straight swap. The number of billionaires doubled during the COVID period. And rough and tough, what the working class and small businesses lost went to the corporates and the ultra wealthy. So that was the bonus. I love this cartoon. It's just, the Hegelian dialectic problem, reaction, solution. It's perfect. It's been used since Roman times. So authorities create hobgoblins, create these fears and problems. They get the reaction, and then they put in the solution they wanted all along. And the people just don't see it, because they believe the problem and they have the reaction through propaganda. Great cartoon. That's what we went through. I won't go through COVID at all, but I've gone through many times the data after 2 years. In Amsterdam, I gave talks on this. That was the checklist. Every single element of COVID was nonsense. And that's on the record, but of course, studiously denied by authorities. I'm going to just look at what's kind of coming. And the big thing is World Economic Forum joined up with the UN in October 2019. The timing is not coincidence. And these are the things that we're now facing. WEF will finance the 2030 agenda. And all that means is the corporates who pour money into WEF will kind of be forced to pour money into 2030 agenda, which is utter dystopia. Climate change is the big thing, of course. It's second on the list. Health, we've been through all that madness. Digital cooperation, you can just read digital IDs. What Tony Blair was trying to get in 2012 and what they're desperately pushing for central bank digital currency and total kind of Chinifying the West. We know what this is. Gender equality, empowerment of women, it's nothing to do with empowerment of women. It's about gender. It's about overturning societal norms that make society stronger. You got to break it down. Mass immigration is a big part of this, but they didn't talk about it. But that's another big strategy. And we're seeing in Dublin, actually, recently, people are realizing now, hold on a minute. I went with this, I went with that. But what the hell is going on? Why do we have 200,000 come in the last few months? Why are we doing this? I mean, it's not to be nice. It's crazy. But we'll know by the end of this exactly why they're doing it. Education skills, that's indoctrination. So capturing the children. And we see all the trans stuff going in around the world into schools. It's all about tearing down statues and weakening culture and weakening sovereignty and nationalism. And this was identified in the 20s by the Pan-European Project. And Clergley and others, they published documents and they said we need to flood the zone with foreign people. Because otherwise we'll never get a pan-European Union. We'll never get a super state of Europe. Because you did all these Swedish people, and over here to be Finnish people, and then to be Irish people with their whiskey and their red hair, and they're never going to be a super state. But we flood all the zones with very different people and mix them all up in a blob, then it's perfect fodder. So the irony is the people driving immigration and migration policies are the biggest racists of all because they're treating minorities and certain races as cattle for their ends. So just think of that irony. They're the racists, but they accuse anyone else of being racist. Now, international agreement, okay, this is a serious one, pandemic prevention and preparedness. This is coming up for next year, and I won't go into detail, but the WHO, which is the UN, which is the WEF, are going for gold here with this, to get a legal structure where all the WHO and the health guidelines now have the word non-binding around 50 times. You can see their document, and there's 50 crossouts. They want non-binding removed from everywhere in the document. So it's a massive power grab. And the international health regulations are nearly worse than the pandemic treaty. Because that's where all the non-binding is being taken out. The WHO is the de facto global leader and leadership for declaring a public health emergency of international concern, a PHEIC, which happens to be fake. You know, you'd almost wonder, are they laughing at us? But the point is, there is some pushback against this, but most media will not cover it. No media are covering it. One of our politicians was pushed on it and he said, oh, I'm aware of it, Jess, and it's good. And he wouldn't say any more. So they're all told, we need this one, you little filthy ants who are politicians in those little filthy democracies, right, under our rule. This is important. So all the politicians are rolling with it. Andrew Bridgen on 12th of December has a debate on all this madness, but I'm guessing you get 2 or 3 people turn up. So it's the people will need to push back. The good news, actually, Graham just told me, this morning in Bournemouth, they told me that New Zealand actually has pushed back on certain elements, like the 18 months to decide whether you approve or not for each country. They're trying to bring back to 10 months and rush it through. New Zealand's kind of blocked that, and the government in New Zealand now is questioning this. And they've also questioned other aspects of it. So that's good. And Graham was saying that Estonia has just kind of pretty much rejecting it and saying, no, they're keeping their Supreme Court and their legislature above this. So these are green shoots, and if they can catch on, we've got a great hope. The African nations, they know it, and Eastern European nations, I'm expecting, yeah, and Hungary, that guy they all call a racist and far right. The Eastern Europeans know about communism, and they know it, and they see it, and they saw it when COVID came in. You know, they could, even in Ireland, all of the Polish and the other guys are from Eastern Europe, where you could just see none of them fell for the nonsense. the soft, fat, white Europeans fell for it. The pampered West Europeans fell like nine pins. But anyway, this thing here, Jakob Nordengerd's latest talk, and I'm going to share the link afterwards, get the guys to share it. Fantastic. So Dr. Jakob Nordengerd, I'm going to go through his material today, which goes through the history, but his latest material is forward-looking. So 2023, governing our planetary emergency. It's all about a planetary emergency now. So hot on the back of COVID, a fake viral emergency, it's planetary emergency. And this is the big deal. You just have to look at the photo and the documents, right? They want to declare a global planetary emergency. Now, this is laugh you out of town stuff. And yet, look what happened during COVID. People, planetary emergency. So UN General Assembly should declare a global planetary emergency at the 2024 Summit of the Future. This is a big thing next year in September. This is the one to watch. And it's being reinforced. Everyone's beginning the drumbeat for this. We need to declare it. And it's completely absurd. But they did it before, right? Emergency plan is being developed for the planetary emergency, right? Complete insanity, these guys. This is the UN, which is Rockefeller, which is WEF. We've got to start thinking these are synonymous. When we see all the madness happening, we should not attack a migrant. We should not complain about this guy wearing a mask. Everyone should be just pointing up to where it's coming from. That's my vision. If everyone pointed to where it's coming from, that would be a problem for them. That would be very hard to push back on. The Alliance, the Global Challenges Foundation, that's funding and driving a lot of this stuff as a partner. Look who's in it. I mean, the Club of Rome, that is the WF, is Rockefeller, is UN, is WHO. These are all one, you know? But there's 70, by the way, partners in the Global Challenges Foundation. It's crazy. The formula for systems transformation as part of this, and it's coming from the Rockefeller bunch who are supporting the planetary emergency. You know, this stuff is self-evident. They have an Earth Commission, they say, will determine the science, right? I mean, it's crazy. And Science-Based Target Network sets the targets, you know, complete bullshit targets, of course. The Earth HQ communicates the science, right? This is straight out of Orwell. The Systems Change Lab monitors and accelerates the changes deemed necessary by Big Brother, right? Yeah. Oh, accelerate. They're accelerating now because that's another thing. It's all to play for all of us, but we're riding down the razor's edge now, and they're accelerating because they are aware there's a lot more awareness in the public, and that's dangerous. So it's kind of a good sign in a twisted way. The Accountability Accelerator holds companies, cities, and countries accountable. And you can see how this links to the health regulations and all, taking out non-binding. They're going for gold. Legally, it's binding. Planetary emergency, WHO, health emergency. Climate is a health emergency, and I'm going to show you that too. Here we are, granddaughter of the Rockefellers. All she's talking is homophobia, patriarchy baked in our systems. We need to reform stakeholder capitalism, which is fascism, or fascism. It's the corporate and state. That's what they're calling stakeholder. All the same family, you know, all the same people. And this guy, here's another guy involved, right? Key financier, billionaire Andre Hoffman, Mava Foundation, vice chair of Roche, the mega pharmaceutical, member of the Club of Rome, right? And a World Economic Forum trustee. That's right at the top. They're literally laughing at us at this stage. So everyone needs to be aware. Global climate health emergency, they got the BMJ on board. 200 health journals call on the United Nations, political leaders, health professionals, to recognize that climate change and biodiversity loss are one indivisible crisis. They're actually one invisible crisis. But one, I just thought that one up actually. I saw the visible, right? One indivisible, and must be tackled together to preserve it. They want to join health. They want a global health emergency being declared on the back of climate change. A health emergency. Now you see the health regulations and the binding, that's where it's important. We call for the WHO to make this declaration before or at the 77th World Health Assembly in May 2024. So you've got all the medical business gunning for dystopia. You know, it's crazy. You saw them during COVID. And here's Nordengaard's slide at the start of his YouTube. UN leaders pact for the future, they're calling it. A pact with who? Well, you're going to see them all now, and they're all the same characters. I love this slide he pulled, redacted, the YouTube channel had it. Every collectivist revolution rides in on a Trojan horse of emergency. It was the tactic of Lenin, Hitler, and Mussolini. In the collectivist sweep over a dozen minor countries of Europe, it was the cry of men striving to get on horseback, and emergency became the justification of the subsequent steps. This technique of creating emergency is the greatest achievement that demagoguery attains. It's clear as crystal. So why have we ended up now with all these crazies and greedy, ultra-rich corporatists seemingly got a good hold of the reins? And I'm going to make it pretty quick here. I saw this on Twitter this morning. I loved it. If you don't already have one, go out and get yourself a conspiracy theorist friend. You're going to need one to understand what's about to happen. So there you are. Take a bow. But anyway, yeah, I interviewed Jakob, and along with Professor Desmond, I saw his story, 18 years of research. He published a PhD on this thing, and they tried to stop it, and they couldn't stop him publishing his PhD, even though the university was funded by Rockefeller, and a big Rockefeller bigwig got involved to stop the PhD. And that was back in 2010. So he's got a PhD, a couple of MAs, and his book is incredible. I think it's out of stock now because I popularized him and he's run out of print copies. But there's the PDF. This is full of all the references for everything I'm going to touch on. The back of the book is packed. It's a PhD essentially. It's zero conspiracy theory of what I'm going to cover. World Economic Forum, this guy is just the manager. You know, he's a useful guy, but he's not a kingpin. And this quote I really like: the Davos class have little need for national loyalty, view national boundaries as obstacles, or national races as ones that need to be watered down and turned upside down, that are thankfully vanishing, and see national governments as residues from the past whose only useful function is to facilitate the elite's global operations. And I mean, there's no conspiracy theory here. This is Harvard, the Harvard Club. He was a power politics professor, a connected guy, and he said it. And that was a long time ago. And the story of the root cause of how we got to where we are, I just think it's important. If 10 or 20% of people understood basic geopolitical documented history, no 5G, no conspiracy theories, no nothing, just the history, they would literally instinctively resist, and they would look at all the media coverage of climate change and all, and they just say, that's bullshit. So I think there's some power, though it's hard to convert. So Rockefeller Special Studies Project, Nelson Rockefeller, who went on to be the vice president, the Rockefeller brothers, Kissinger, of course, that loathsome evil man, he was in there. They identified him as a very useful person who'd do whatever was needed, and he did. It's on the historical record. They said that their task, they could not escape, and history has imposed it on the Rockefeller brothers, to create a new world order in all its dimensions: spiritual, economic, political, and social. So this just shows you on the record, the receipt, that they are going for a full world government back in the 50s, and it is their right and it's imposed on them. They believe it. And it's not just about money, it's everything. And here we are. Their challenge was to build a new structure which would make possible the fulfillment of, what, loads of money for them? Rich guy stuff? No. The basic purposes of humanity. So these are the kind of nut bars, the richest family in America, massive influence on everyone around them and leaders. And this is what they want, you know? So people think this kind of organically happened because of Big Pharma. No, it's by design and by persistence over multi-generations. That's why we are where we are. David Rockefeller was counsel of the CFR, Foreign Relations, hugely powerful group, full of presidents and top diplomats. And he had them for the 70 to 85, very critical period. They had Kissinger on board, of course, as well. And I'm going to move pretty fast now because of time. They identified, and it's an important point, global challenges is all they were interested in because they wanted a global world government. So they weren't interested if you spilled 1 billion gallons of oil into the Niger Delta. They didn't care about environmentalism, didn't care about anything. Just global challenges that could be used for propaganda because they needed a global response, i.e. global government. And they were identifying this in the 50s. They knew in advance that's what was needed. And in fairness, they were correct. Global health we know about, but interestingly, they identified climate change in the 50s without a single scientist present. Because they identified it, of course, as an opportunity. A global climate problem would need a global government. So you see how simple this is. I 30 years in corporate, and I played a lot of corporate games in politics, manipulation. This is simply that at a higher level. You identify the problem, you create the problem, and then you manipulate the people to go behind your solution. It's simple stuff, in fairness. They threw in massive value of land and I know 50 million to create the United Nations building, and they view that as their own club. Harvard's international seminar they made to get together all the top minds and all the kind of clever, top influential people to get them into the club, you know, and that was a huge deal. That was David Rockefeller, the chairman of Chase Bank, the biggest bank in America, and again they had Kissinger to direct it. And it was funded by Ford Foundation and Rockefeller Foundation. And a while later, it went on the record, it was discovered, it's funded by the CIA, which is actually natural because the CIA have America's interests and world interests at heart, and they recognized how important this was. You know, so the average person is told it's a conspiracy theory about these guys. The CIA know that this is huge. This is the future world government. So they're in. Of course they're in. The Apprentice, Charles Schwab, he was a weirdo, kind of with a Nazi kind of background. His father was a Nazi provider of industrial goods during the war. Very murky past, but he ends up in Harvard and they spot him and they say, this is our sociopath. He is the guy. Just like they spotted Kissinger. And he got to laugh. Like this, look at him. He came over talking about all these things and they just said, that guy, we can use him. And they did. The which?
Kissinger's apprentice.
Yes, very much so. That's going to come up. Absolutely. They got Kissinger to bring him into his harem, right? To prepare him for his role. No, it's laughable. So he set up Schwab. They supported him and funded him, set up the European Management Forum, which became the World Economic Forum, and that was in 1971. And at the time, these are the characters involved. So again, Harvard is a hotbed for globalism and global government. Has been forever. Barbara Ward's an economist, but all she'd bang on about, and she wrote a book, sustainable development. Population's too big. We need to lower population, sustainable. So they're the guys who came out with all the stuff that we're now told to talk about as a conspiracy theory. But the richest people in the world all put together, countless organizations, to drive this stuff, but we're meant to believe it's a conspiracy theory. And it's all on the record, yeah? So, just to remind people, the WF now, if we jump forward to today, they're the top paying partners. This is power. I mean, people say to me on Twitter, oh, the WF are just a talk shop. I mean, the naivety. I mean, look, Goldman Sachs, Intel, JP Morgan, biggest bank in America, McKinsey, Open Society, Soros, Bill and Melinda, Chevron, Big Oil, you know. And these are just the top partners because I went on their website, and this isn't all of them, but this is their other partners. And they're all funding the WEF. GE, EY, Facebook, of course, Goldman Sachs, yeah. It's just all. Swiss Re, the biggest reinsurer in the world for insurance. All of the big corporates are in there. Zurich Insurance, the whole lot. Every name, AstraZeneca, all the pharma. So everyone corporate is in here and they're funding them. So they've endless money. Yeah?
Just a quick one. I've noticed that if you go to O on there, you've got Omnicom down a little bit.
Omnicom.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was digging around the Cabinet Office share spend over £25,000. And during COVID, they spent £1 billion of our money on advertising COVID-19. And it said marketing COVID-19. That's what it said on the spreadsheet. I took all the spreadsheets where everyone had Omnicom, they gave them some money. It came to £1 billion. And that money went straight to America, to an American corporation.
Yeah.
They were given £350 million by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Of course.
To help with their own medical clinics.
Yeah.
And when people talk about Bill and Melinda Gates, I just thought, you should be quiet, you sound mad, you sound like a lunatic. And within 5 minutes of me digging around, I found that link, and I just thought, that's our money. That's what it's called. And it's absolutely, we're living in some crazy times. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's a great point, and I didn't know that particular Omnicom story, but it's nuts, and they're hoisting us on our own petard. Our tax money, all our money and our stuff is given to the wealthy during COVID. Like every way you turn, they fleece us, and then they pay the guy to shave us some more. But people are getting more aware, and in the Q&A we'll talk about path forward and hope. I'm going to move pretty quick because of time, but the trustees there, I mean, just look at these people. You know, the people, and Jack Ma from Alibaba, and the Chinese are in, the Russians are in, don't mind that war. At the top level, they're all on the blower, agreeing. And that's the way it is. And Larry Fink, BlackRock, you know what I mean? Rubenstein, Carlyle. And the whole basis, the Davos Manifesto back in 72, they want to be the trustees of the material universe. So just shocking bunch of ne'er-do-wells. Stockholm Conference 72, that was a big deal. Morris Strong came in the scene. He was a guy with questionable predilections, shall we say, and he worked in the Canadian oil industry, a Rockefeller business, and a Rockefeller lawyer identified him yet again as a potentially useful person. Sociopath, of course. He went on, he was put in the UN as a security manager of security, just a role to get him in. In no time, he was the head of the environmental wing of the UN. This is Rockefeller's oil boy they picked up as an oil worker. They got him all the way up to the top of the UN. So it's just like, it's almost comical, but there you have. And Only One Earth is the book from that Barbara lady I showed you. And this became a Bible for them, all about, we have too much population, small planet. Complete nonsense. If you put everyone in the world in a 1 meter square, I think they'd fill a small piece of Texas. You know, all of these things, 8 billion sounds like a lot, but it depends on whether you appropriately manage your resources or not. Rockefeller Foundation, of course, up to their neck in Stockholm Climate Conference, Club of Rome. Club of Rome we'll get to. Morris, of course, someone mentioned, was the mentor for Klaus Schwab. It's on the record. Of course it was. Do you see how few key people are in here? And they're literally levering the whole world on a fulcrum when it's really primarily Rockefeller and Rockefeller's stooges. So, World Problematique, they set up the Club of Rome, I think in 68, Aurelio Pecci, and he was a super rich kind of senior director or CEO of Fiat. And Limits to Growth was the new Bible that they wrote, complete nonsense, and funded the Club of Rome by Giovanni Agnelli, who was the richest man in Italy. Richest man in Italy. And he just happens to be best buddies with his fellow Chase Manhattan Bank guy, David Rockefeller. And global management required. That was always the drumbeat. It can only be global. Local politicians, local governments cannot do this. We're all going to die because we need a global government. And this is their original book, The First Global Revolution. You can almost see the neo-Marxism, right? You know what they say? In searching for a common enemy, and this is their words, this is published, against whom we can unite, meaning super rich guys, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like, would fit the bill. Would fit the bill. What if you make up a story about X? Would that fit the bill? This is how bad it is. All those dangers are caused by human intervention, yada, 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 yada. The real enemy then is humanity itself. And that's Club of Rome. That is still at the center of the stuff I showed you earlier that's coming up in the next couple of years. These are the guys we're talking about, okay? Super fast. I'm going to flick through these. I changed the slides in a cafe nearby to speed this up. Davos Manifesto, 1973, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. Same stuff. Davos is the same stuff. Same guys meeting on islands to talk about this stuff. That's all they talk about. The Trilateral Commission set up in 73, hugely powerful. Clinton, everyone who's anyone is in the Trilateral Commission. And that's where they also go through. This guy, Gardner, was in Rockefeller Brothers Fund 20 years previous. He wrote a book on a new order in the world in the magazine Foreign Affairs of Trilateral Commission. And that goes out to, of course, more Trilateral Commission type people, which is the same bunch of people. World Future Society, 2 years later, 75, Nelson Rockefeller heads it up. And we've got this Wagner futurist nut job. And he's talking about crisis and opportunity. The way to bring in a new system is with crisis. So they literally are whooping about pandemics or climate collapses, which will give them a chance to bring in a new society. No one even knows these nutters exist, right? 1987, World Economic Forum. The name is changed from European Economic or Management. There we have an older Morris Strong, right? Their boy, screaming about global warming in 1987. Because they know that's their main strategy. Global catastrophe. Totally made up. He says in 72, UN environment boss, him, Strong, we have 10 years to stop the catastrophe. Yeah, 10 years. 1982 came along. 92, 2002, 2012, 2022. 2032 is going to be the same. Nothing, right? And they know it. They know it's a scam. Strong ended up being hounded out of the West for billions of dollars of embezzlement, and he fled the law, and the Chinese took him in. He spent his last few years in China. That's who we're talking about. This is the kind of person, so I just want to, this is all published, and this can be discussed with people, and anyone who sees this says, oh my God, everything's just bullshit, which it is. Common Future 87, moving fast, Brundtland Commission, right? Morris Strong, more climate nonsense. He's Canada, Petro, Club of Rome, right? Complete sickos. And Trilateral Commission, and she's Statoil connected. Always big oil and big elite money. Never any different. And Rockefeller funded making sure that sustainable development and climate change specifically was included in the outcome. They paid to get climate change shoved in there. That's how desperate they are to use climate change. And you've seen the last couple of years, right, how things have ramped up. That's because it's their big bet. The climate nonsense is their big bet. Agenda 21, quite famous, 92, all published. It's called a conspiracy theory. But it's quite shocking. They met Morris Strong again, right, that reprobate. 154 countries our leaders went over and signed up committing to an agenda. No media coverage, no votes, no discussion. They went off with a bunch of absolute, reptiles and signed us off. And as Sandy, the British lady, I forget her second name, Lane or Sandy, great girl, we had an interview and she said, imagine the clinking of champagne glasses with these scumbags that evening, that they got 154 democratic countries to sign up to a nonsense agenda. Sandy Adams, great lady, yeah. So I'm going to speed through the rest. Earth Charter Commission 92, the Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, Mikhail Gorbachev brought in a few other big guys. Nelson Rockefeller's son, Stephen, led it. Rockefeller again, Morris Strong again. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands is her father. Prince Bernhard is the founder of the Bilderberg Group, right? And she's, I don't have it here because I changed the slides, she's big Shell oil money. And of course, Rockefellers are Exxon and oil money too. Like, you couldn't make it up, right? A great transition, more nonsense in 2002. Rockefeller, Stephen heads it up. All the vision for a new future and a broken world that we need to fix. All bullshit. The only problem was corporate-led pollution. That, in fairness, got addressed largely. The carbon thing is complete nonsense. Then in 1993, global leaders of WEF. These are 93 guys. Tony Blair. Merkel, Bill Gates was in there. He was one of the first, you know. All the usual suspects were in there in 1993. And 2004 onwards, we had these reptiles here, like Ardern and Macron in France. We saw what happened in their countries during COVID, right? This stuff, and Black Lives Matter lady, they were all caught for buying mansions and everything with the money, completely corrupt, right? And this idiot, DiCaprio. So, but they have 4,000 of those, 4,000 leaders, you know. And then 2020 initiative, they sent all these leaders off to brainstorm what the future would look like, a shared vision. They were given the vision. And all the politicians just went off and brainstormed how they'd do it, like good little boys and girls. So again, it's comical corporate stuff. I've lived through it for 20 years, but this is just at a much higher level. Global Risks Report, we'll blast through that, but they basically start talking in 2006 about pandemics. Because they know climate will be pretty good, but they also want more. And pandemic is a trigger event. Climate is always a continuous thing. Oh, climate's bad. And you keep convincing people this. Whereas a pandemic can go, oh my God, everyone has to hide under the bed. So 2006, they were putting all that pandemic stuff down. And they were highlighting that the big problem would be misinformation. Misinformation. Yeah, oh, because people won't trust the government and they can make the panic worse. See the irony? People not trusting the government say that there's no panic, and the government are driving the panic. So misinformation is stopping an inappropriate panic. But no, they say, oh no, it'll make the panic worse. They knew exactly what they were doing. During the financial crisis, 2008, WF did the Global Brains Trust. And of course, they were taking advantage of financial collapse because this had been identified in 2002. Pandemic, climate change, financial collapse, and terrorism. These were the opportunities, right? So they took the opportunity. They set up 70 global councils, 1,500 experts, because WF are getting a pile of money from all the corporates. So they can set up any council they want, any meeting they want. Too lavish is not lavish enough. They have that advantage. And bringing together experts to redesign a new international system, Klaus Schwab, all about a world government. They bring in this fella before he had a bit of trouble in the East, but they want everyone on board. And I think the Chinese are well connected. Xi Jinping as well is well connected. You know, he knows what's being rolled out here, the Chinification of the West, and I'm sure in some way it will suit the Chinese because the West will be under much better control, which means less potential problem in the long run with China. So, and China helped massively in COVID to start the crisis. Remember, they had 50,000 bots on Twitter, all screaming about how we needed to lock down. So China helped them out, you know. Anyway, conspiracy theorists, you talk about New World Order. You automatically get a warning on YouTube if you mention New World Order in a video. They'll put a Wikipedia link to New World Order conspiracy, automatically, right? Kissinger in the New York Times, 2009, the chance for a New World Order. It's extraordinary, isn't it? They have all said it. The Rockefellers in the 50s all talked about a New World Order. It came from them. But they've artfully made it sound like it's a crazy idea. But there you go. So, and here they talk about fear. You know, Kissinger, fear of jihadists, 9/11, fear, common strategies. Climate change permits no national or regional solutions. Always the same drumbeat, clear as crystal. They want a world government and they want to use nonsense to get it, right? So just so everyone knows. G20 was a big deal, set up in 2009, and most of the guys in there are young global leaders. G20 is a very, very powerful organization. And the WEF set up a grassroots network in 2011, the Shapers, WF Shapers, 14,000 internet personalities, under 30 popular people, 480 hubs in 150 countries. So when COVID broke and you had all these internet personalities suddenly wanting to wear 17 masks and get under the bed in case Granny died, well, they had a nice little seeded group of nut jobs, didn't they? Because that was 2011. That was 9 years in advance. Yeah. Rockefeller Foundation, Lockstep, that was just interesting. A lot of people talk about 2010. They did scenarios for the future. The lockstep one was one with a pandemic where people had no trust in the government, and the governments all over the world had to put in draconian, tops-down authoritarian measures. And the people, they said in 2010, would accept them because of their own safety. And they were right. The people accepted it largely for their safety. So that's a mirror image of what happened in 2020, and it was all written by Rockefeller Foundation in 2010. All documented, it's still available on the web, the report, amazingly. Public-private partnership 2015, this is Klaus Schwab himself, and he's all talking now about public-private partnership. Time has come for a new stakeholder paradigm of international governance. And it's all about the corporations working with the governments. But of course, a World War II buff would know what Benito Mussolini said, and he was correct. Fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism because it is a merger of state and corporate power. Stakeholder capitalism, what Klaus is promising us openly, is fascism. It's a merger of corporate and state power. But we're all told fascism is some guys drinking too much with skinheads and boots, or it was Hitler. Well, Hitler was National Socialism. Hitler was fascism, but National Socialism. It was socialism. It was the joining of the unions and the state together. So people don't even know their definitions anymore. So there you have it. Fascism is what he's promising. The global goals is the way to get it. All of this crazy stuff, the UN. And then the fourth industrial revolution, I'll show briefly because this guy and his goons are unstoppable. They're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and they have hundreds of centres around the world, including Russia, for the fourth industrial revolution. You never heard about it, but it's all grist to the same nut jobbery mill. Increasing digital technology, of course, digital tracking, reshaping the physical world, altering the human, all of this guff about implants and neuro and biotechnology. These guys are technocrats. They want a technocratic, totalitarian world government. You could argue, well, maybe they should, because they'll sit at the top of it. But of course, no one except the top 0.01% are going to benefit. And this was a huge point I may have mentioned earlier, 2019, no media coverage, right? WEF and the UN joined officially together. Huge event, the event of the century for the inhabitants of this planet, and no media coverage. And that's what kicked things off for the fast stuff, you know. And I read these at the start. This is all code for just nasty nonsense of world government control. That's what it is. Nice words, right? All completely corrupt. And I just show, Nordinger put this together, and I think it's very good. This is the current global governance, but they haven't got it over the line, but it's the current model of reality. And we're all feeling it and seeing it when things make no sense. It's the UN, the G20 and WEF are the global government at the moment, and intended to be going forward if we don't, push back. Regional, of course, you got EU and the other regions, national, and then local. So the politicians down here instinctively find out very quickly when they go into office, voted by the people. They go into office and they very quickly realize that they don't know already who they report to. And that's why Ireland got stuffed beyond any capacity that they didn't even have in the first place in the last year with migrants. Because they were told from the top, that's what you got to do, guys. And our politicians go, okay, how many do you want us to stuff in with no houses? 200K. So I think that's essentially what's happening. I don't know that, but that's essentially what's happening. So when everyone's there saying, but why are you shutting down a new nursing home to make it? This happened in the south of Ireland last week. A new nursing home being built that was badly needed, and the local community, I think, was 1,200 people. They've cancelled the nursing home, the care home, and it's been changed into accommodation for young male migrants. And people marched and all, but people are saying, the people down there are saying, how can this be happening? The people down there don't know what I'm telling you. And I think if they did know, they'd behave differently and they'd push a lot harder if they knew it's an absolute scam from the top. So that's why I think this is important. And they got asked, one of the Irish proper journalists, there are so few, he's with gript.ie, gript.ie, they're the only news service that covers anything. And he caught the Minister of Children, who's, in my mind, he's an absolute weirdo. And I asked him, why is all the accommodation coming up seems to be for young males, unmarried males? Innocently asked him. And he started nervously flapping. Oh, and you could see he knew it's a scam. And he said, "Oh well, that's the biggest proportion of who has been entering." And he admitted it. So they said we're bringing in women and children from Ukraine. And everyone said, "Yes, do the right thing." They brought in young unmarried males, and they sent it out in the languages of the Congo and loads of other languages over in Africa and Ukrainian and Georgian. They did that last year, openly. That's what they've got. And the people are thinking, oh, we're helping Ukrainian women and children. You see, the scam is just, it's breathtaking, but it's here. We know it. And I'm the least racist person on the planet. And that's why they've never called me a racist, because I have a record going back at the opposite forever. But they'd love to call me one. They'd love to try and call me one, but they can't. Decade of action, and I'm going to have to blast through this because we need a Q&A and we're going to be thrown out. The decade of action, I was going to go through these, but essentially that was, Greta was sent to New York for the decade of action. And of course it's the DON, it's the decade of nonsense, because it's all nonsense, all of it. The Club of Rome, which we know is the WF, is Rockefeller, is UN, is WHO. They're all the one thing. Club of Rome, their job is to make propaganda about climate catastrophe. And sure enough, Planetary Emergency Plan came from them. Event 201, October 2019, Bill and Melinda, Johns Hopkins, World Economic Forum, right, which are all kind of one and the same, really. They ran an event full of media, ex-CIA, communications experts, and they said, what if there was a coronavirus pandemic? There could be a lot of misinformation. I mean, you couldn't make it up. You couldn't make it up. And they did that in October 19. So it's like, what if there's one? What Bill, in the next 50 years? You know, maybe in 2047. When are you thinking? Because we haven't had one for 100 years. And the way I understand viruses, we probably never really will have one again outside of a lab-made virus. Because the viruses now have reached an equilibrium and people don't have the malnutrition that causes genuine pandemics. So when do you think, Bill? What will Bill say? Maybe in a couple of months. Come on. It's farcical. You know, and the people you can't convert. If they knew that, come on. I mean, it's crazy. Global health emergency came from this completely corrupt Turkey, of course, on 11th of March. And then we have all the other stuff in 19 that went on. The immunization agenda 2030 about getting everyone digitized vaccine. That was 2019, co-creating the future of vaccines. The Commons Project for Common Pass, WF Young Global Leader with Rockefeller Foundation funding. Mid-19, they're setting up a whole digital vaccine passport infrastructure. I found that out in the summer of 2020, and I said, I don't want to be conspiracy theorists, but that is insane. And sure enough, we got the pass then, you know, later. Global health architecture, we talked about these treaties, they're shocking. And the G20 agenda, it's all the same goal. Global health architecture, digital transformation, sustainable energy and windmills. So literally they're all in it together. All there is get rid of the food, give them fake food, take away their energy, take the third world's real energy away, give them windmills, and let's just have a nice, happy planet that we can reside over with a world government over an ant farm. And that, in a nutshell, is what they'd like. They're not going to get it, though, and Q&A is really about, you know, what one can do. And I think awareness, you know, awareness is huge, and awareness of what the real root cause is and the real published history is all there to be shared. I just think it's really important. And not playing along with this madness is another thing. Personally, in our own small way, don't eat fake food, eat real food, be strong, be resilient, use cash, don't get trapped into their digital prison in as much as you can, etc. But sorry, I'm going to have to stop there because I'm guessing we're close to 6. Gotta call it, guys, but should we do it again? Thank you so much.